Mesdames et messieurs,
The greatest festival of our contemporary society, the Olympic Games, is about to begin.
This is gonna be close.
Oh! They're all completely gassed! They've given it everything on their global bucket! Oh, yeah! Go! Oh!
Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. But that is an Olympic championship.
Ready?
Hello and welcome to another episode of Keep the Flame Alive, the podcast for fans of the Olympics and Paralympics. If you love the games, we are the show for you. I am your host, Jill Jaracz, joined as always by my lovely co-host, Alison Brown. Alison, hello, how are you?
Hello, in the depths of the summer heat.
Yes. Today, it's like 2:00 in the afternoon and we haven't had a power outage here in my house. So that's
a
great.
party time. That is party time. Don't open the refrigerator door.
I know. But summer is also a big time of Olympic anniversaries. We have talked a little bit about Montreal's 1976 50th anniversary. We'll be talking about Atlanta 1996's 30th anniversary on our next episode, which means it's been 5 years since our Atlanta 1996 history moments.
That's amazing to me because that feels like we just did that Olympics.
Yeah, it's nuts. It's already 30 years. But today we're marking 26 years because we are profiling the book, The 1980 Moscow Olympics, A Day-by-Day History by Keep the Flame Alive listener and author Tommy Phillips. Book came out last year in time for that 25th anniversary, but we were like in the throes of Milano Cortina planning.
Exactly. We couldn't focus on 25th anniversary when all we could think of was snow.
Right. So Moscow 1980 took place on July 19th through August 3rd. And it's always been a dark spot for us thanks to the U.S.-led boycott of these games. It's been a big black dark hole for us. But thank you to Tommy. He fills in those missing gaps with what happened during the competition. Some of it is amazing. Some of it is outrageous. Take a listen. Tommy Phillips, you've written the book, The 1980 Moscow Olympics, A Day-by-Day History, filling a big black hole for Alison and me. So we really appreciate that. Oh, thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome. Yeah, it's nice. It's great being here.
What drew you to writing this book?
Well, I got interested in these Olympics because of an old book I had. It was a book on the 1992 Olympics where it had all the medal counts. And I looked in the medal count and I'm like, oh, USA is in every single one of these except one. And I was like, why are they not in this 1980 one? And I couldn't figure it out. So I researched it and figured out that they boycotted those Olympics. That was me as a kid getting interested in this topic. And then later on in life, I decided, you know what, I've never really figured out what even happened during those Olympics. So I want to research them. And that's what I did.
Yeah, we've never figured out what happened in those Olympics until we read the book, which when Jill says it's a black hole, because as you talk about in the book, there was no coverage in the United States.
Yeah, no TV coverage except for one guy who got a 16-foot satellite dish on his house so he could get the Russian broadcasted. But yeah, aside from that, there were only like a few minutes of highlights and that was it. So no one really knew what was going on.
That is a dedicated fan, I would say.
Yeah.
What were your preconceived notions about Moscow before you started doing the research and really digging into those games?
Well, I figured that the reason why the Soviet Union won all the medals was simply because they had the most people there. But what I didn't realize was that they were using all sorts of ways of getting their athletes across the finish line, so to speak, like the javelin throws. Every time a Soviet javelin thrower went back to throw it, they open up the doors of the stadium to let the wind come in, and then after that, they'd close them again for the next person. So, yeah, crazy stories like that. I never expected those things. I thought that the Soviets were dominant, mainly because of their many people, but I didn't realize what lengths they went to help their players win.
One of the interesting things was the men's basketball tournament, where
Mhm.
it was like a repeat of Munich 1972, where they kept
Yeah,
putting seconds back on the clock, but it didn't
yeah,
work in their favor this time.
yeah, yeah. And that was the one that probably they wanted to win the most, was the men's basketball gold medal. And they figured it was going to be easy because the United States wasn't there. And then Italy beat them, Yugoslavia ended up with the gold medal, and they ended up with just a bronze medal in basketball, which they were all whistling, and which I guess that's the way they boo over in Russia, is by whistling all the time, and they did that because they expected it to be an easy gold medal, and it wasn't.
Another way that they put their finger on the scales was doping.
Oh yeah, yeah. That wasn't just the Soviets, though. That was pretty much everyone in the Eastern Bloc, especially the East Germans. It was so amusing whenever I went back to write about each gold medalist, and it was one after another. It would say, yeah, this person was caught doping in this year. There was a ton of doping going on. It made the Balco incident look like nothing. Basically, almost everyone who won a medal in those swimming events had some sort of doping going on, at least those for the Eastern Bloc countries.
But nobody caught doping in Moscow.
No, they ended up with 0 positive tests, and until years later after the fact, but they tried to claim that they were the cleanest Olympics ever because they never had an official doping case. But those were all found out whenever Germany was reunified and the Soviet Union collapsed.
I want to talk a little bit about Moscow as a host. Moscow was a good host choice for this time period because this games was really down between LA and
Mhm.
Moscow to be the host.
Right. So in 76, it was between Montreal, Moscow, and LA, and Montreal won that one. The next two were like, okay, whoever's left on the list, we'll let them do it. And it was, so Moscow won the 80, and then it was like, okay, LA automatically wins 84. Obviously, with the boycotts and everything, it probably wasn't the best choice, though it did have some pretty impressive venues. So I can't argue with the choices of some of these venues. They were really nice, but probably not the best idea to host the Olympics in Moscow in these times, that's for sure.
We talk about a boycott. Who benefits most from this boycott?
Probably the home country in East Germany, basically, because they get all the medals that the United States would have won, or other countries such as Japan. Yeah, so Soviet Union and East Germany benefited the most. I mean, I'm sure they would have benefited just from being at home, but the fact that the United States wasn't there, they did a lot better.
Don't want to dwell on the boycott, but I do want to mention something that struck me in your notes was Afghanistan didn't boycott. Afghanistan was
Mhm.
there, which I
Yeah.
found so surprising.
Yeah. I really don't know the story behind that. They didn't boycott, but I was surprised about it.
And then the press talking about the boycott, all the American press is the worst games ever, and all
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
the European press, it was the best games ever. So
Yeah.
just talk a little bit about how it was perceived so differently in the different places.
whenever you look at the United States press and talking about the Olympics, they would make fun of Lord Killinan, IOC. They'd be making fun of him and saying, he was overweight and stuff. They had some weird insults for him. And then the Russian media and the media from other parts of the world were talking about how it was such a fantastic Olympics. Everything was fine. And then, of course, there were the journalists who were in Moscow itself, and they were getting arrested for saying things that weren't nice enough to the Soviets. And yeah, a whole bunch of controversy with that.
Some of the sports had really different competition rules. Wrestling comes to mind, and we've talked from talking with the dulcet tones of Jason Bryant. We know that wrestling has had a lot of format and rule changes over the decades, and a lot of problems with that. But this sport was really weird. First, did you have any idea that wrestling was so different when you first started looking into it?
No, I had no idea. And honestly, by the end, I had as much of an idea as I did at the beginning. It was so confusing. I'm like, okay, so you got penalty points. If you got so many points, you get eliminated. And then there'd be a second round. And then we'd find out who got the most points and they'd get eliminated. And by the end, it was like, how did that person end up with the gold medal whenever they didn't have the least penalty points? It was so bizarre. I thought that was one of the more amusing events of how they scored it. Definitely.
Right, because it didn't even seem like you had to win a match. You just had to
Right.
escape with
with
the least points, and you stayed in. It was just like, let me get fewer points than everybody else, or just at least one more guy, and I stay in the match. And this is really weird. And who thought this was a good idea? There were still a lot of, we have no elimination brackets. We just have round robin play. And then the winners, there's no gold medal game per se. There's just, you won the round robin. So therefore you win.
Yeah, you'd have 6 teams and just a round robin. Although some of them did have gold medal games, but they were a lot different because you didn't have semifinals. You just had the top 2 teams playing each other for the gold, and then the 3rd and 4th place teams playing for the bronze. Most of these events, though, they had a hard time finding teams to even participate, which is why Zimbabwe ended up winning the gold medal in women's field hockey.
There were a lot of lucky countries. It felt like a lot of lucky athletes and a lot of lucky countries who all of a sudden found themselves going to the Olympics when they had not planned to.
Yeah, you had some really weird choices for teams to be in these competitions whenever they had to go to the next alternate and the next alternate and next alternate, so to speak.
It just is so wild. But in a way, like, that's a silver lining in a sense for some of these very small countries to have that recognition of having Olympians, and for those sports getting more interest in other countries, right?
Yeah. So that was a real bonus to those countries who got to compete. But the problem is that it was pretty much no competition for the host country, and they simply used it as a way of getting just another medal on their, 80 gold medals, something like that. At the time, it was the most gold medals ever, and then then LA ended up being one more than that for the United States.
In a way, that's like a big, hey, we're the top dog, really.
You mentioned a lot when you were talking about the press coverage that a lot of the athletes were asked about, would you have won if the United States et al. Had not boycott? And a lot of the athletes seemed to have the same answer. It was like, I'm the one who's here.
Yeah. almost all the athletes would just be like, well, so and so isn't here, so we can't really say anything about it. And even Yugoslavia basketball, men's basketball team was like, oh, we probably could beat the United States, but we're not going to take on their challenge. So, because some people had suggested the United States to challenge Yugoslavian basketball, and I was like, nah, we're good. So, no one wanted to talk about who was missing. They just wanted to talk about, oh, yeah, I won the gold medal, and that's all that mattered.
Well, in Yugoslavian basketball, like you see the different entities from
Mm-hmm.
Yugoslavia that are countries
Yeah,
today and how big they are in basketball now.
yeah,
And it's just kind of interesting, especially 3x3. You get these other
yeah.
styles, and they're still a powerhouse, even though, I mean, I think some sports historians would want to go, well, these games have an asterisk because of the boycott, and LA has an
Mm-hmm.
asterisk because of the
Mm-hmm.
boycott. But let's be honest, Americans don't think LA has an asterisk. They
Yeah,
just want to put an asterisk on Moscow 1980. And I'm sure the
yeah,
reverse is the same too
yeah.
when Russians talk about the 84 games. But like we've said, it's who's there is what matters, and
Mhm.
who's there, that's who wins the gold. And you say that for any sport in any event where you have injuries or countries not participating or whatever. Doesn't matter. Nobody remembers who wasn't there at some point in
Right.
time.
Yeah, it just goes into the books as a gold medal, and most people don't look back and say, "Oh, this is who they beat," and they had less competition. The triple jump. This was crazy. They had two people, a Brazilian and Australian, in a triple jump. Both broke the Olympic record, and both of them were disqualified for or fouled on it. And these were people who never fouled in their entire careers. So they were like, how did that even happen? And of course, the Soviets ended up 1 and 2 in the standings. But those would have both been Olympic records, and they got wiped out by some shady judging.
Some questionable fouls,
Yeah,
let's say.
yeah, yeah.
When you were writing the book, I'm curious, and this would come up, did you ever get any pushback like, oh, why are you writing about Moscow?
Well, actually, the funny thing is, no, most people didn't know I was even writing the book about it. So I was doing all this football stuff at the same time. So it was kind of a side project for a while, and then I really got into it. But everyone thought I was writing about football at the time. So some people did find it incredibly interesting that I was doing it on the 80 games because they were like, oh, so those are the ones we didn't go to. So I was like, yeah, so, but yeah, overall, most people didn't realize I was even writing this book.
Your secret obsession, Tommy.
Yeah.
We've exposed you.
How long did it take to write?
I know it took about a year to complete, but I was doing it as a side project for some time. So probably about 6 months of just working on this thing alone. But it came out to a whole year because I got into it and I was enjoying it. And I was like, okay, this might be something interesting. And then it turned into an all out book. And I was like, okay, so yeah.
How hard was it to find English language material?
Oh, very hard. So I went on eBay and found all the results books for the 1980 Olympics, which cost quite a bit, but half of them were all in Russian. So I had to use my phone to translate them as I looked at them. So, I mean, I started to learn the abbreviations in Russian by the ones that came up the most. I'm like, okay, that's the USSR and that's East Germany. But yeah, I was translating all kinds of Russian things because there simply just wasn't any English coverage of it.
What was your writing process, right? Did you look at this sport by sport, or did you look at it day by day as you structure it in the book?
That's a good question because I kind of did both. So I would sometimes look at a sport and be like, okay, so these are the players who got eliminated and this is who won. But then other times I just do it day by day. So yeah, I'd say probably half and half with that.
What did you think about the ceremonies? Because we're talking good Soviet
Yeah.
ceremonies
Yeah.
style here. And that's
Yeah.
also an element of the beginning and the end.
Yeah, the opening ceremony, which I watched, but it was all in Russian, so I didn't understand anything. That was very impressive, and every single republic had their own bit of the ceremony. But ultimately, all people remember is the flagpoles that had no flags on them, and the fact that you couldn't raise the American flag in the closing ceremony, and so they had to just do the Los Angeles city flag at the closing ceremony because the USOC wouldn't allow it to be raised.
Yeah, the handover ceremony must have been such a strange situation because you're handing over to someone who's not there.
Yeah, that was really weird. I can't remember if there were United States people on hand to do the handover ceremony. There probably were a few, but yeah, they were only allowed to use the Los Angeles city flag and they were not allowed to use the United States flag.
The United States flag did make an appearance at the opening ceremony, though.
Yeah.
That's a strange little story. You want to tell that story?
Yeah, so a couple of guys came in and had a 6-foot tall American flag and they raised it up during the opening ceremony. And of course, they got a lot of pushback, but most of the pushback came from more American Western sources who were like, well, why would you even come here with the American flag? And like, well, we want to support our country. We want to represent, I guess. So that's what happened there.
Now, were they just fans? Were they just
Yeah,
in the stadium?
yeah, I don't know why they were over there, but they were Americans who were over there to watch the Olympics.
I wonder what that was like being American and being there to watch the games, or even if like you were part of the ambassador's family or worked in any kind of embassy in the Soviet Union at the time and decided that
Mhm.
you wanted to go to the games, and then all of a sudden your country's not there and you can't cheer for them. One thing I noticed, it did not seem that all Iron Curtain countries were treated the same by the Soviet Union. And I think,
Yeah.
like, you could tell some lesser favored nation status going on with some of these. Are there any examples that you remember? Something about Poland sticks out to me,
Yeah,
but
the pole vaulter from Poland. I cannot pronounce his name, and I apologize for that, but he won the pole vault, and I think he broke the world record. I'd have to check on that, but and whenever he beat the Soviet players at the pole vault, the fans were whistling at him. So then he gave them a certain gesture, and this gesture really rankled their fans and really got them mad. But it also was Poland loved it, and Polish people loved this gesture that they stood up. He stood up against the Soviets. So yeah, the and definitely the Polish did not get treated well by the Soviets and their press.
oh, I was going to say, and probably judging too. Let's
Yeah,
be honest, there was a lot of
yeah,
controversial judging.
Yeah, I was going to say, nor did my beloved Romanian Nadia
yeah.
Comaneci do fared well with the Soviet judging.
Yes, he ended up tying for a silver medal in the all around whenever it was clear that she probably should have won. And then the Romanian judge refused to give the final scores because he disagreed with them. So it was a big long pause waiting for those final scores. until finally they forced her to do it and made it so that, the Soviet Davidova, I think it was, she won the gold medal and Nadia ended up tying for the silver.
Just wrong. Just wrong.
I kind of wonder what it was like for the athletes from these satellite nations who may or may not have frosty relations with the Soviet Union, or even for East Germany, which obviously did have good relations with the Soviet Union at the time, who also did so well in the medal table, although they also had such a good doping campaign going on. But it's interesting just to see, and maybe this is because I have this American perspective, it just seems like favoritism going down. Maybe not, but maybe.
Oh, there's definitely a lot of favoritism. I mean, the stuff I talked about was just the stuff that I was able to find out in the American press. There's probably so much more that went on behind the scenes to kind of rig it so that the Soviets would get certain medals.
How did your thinking about these games change? Like, what did you think about Moscow going into writing this book, and what do you think about it now?
Originally, when I started writing about it, I just felt the same way that most Americans feel, it's Russia, it's terrible. And whenever I was finished writing, I'm like, yep, it's Russia and it's terrible. But they did have some pretty cool venues. So my opinion on the government and everything about Russia was still the same. But I was like, they had some pretty good stadiums and pretty good venues.
And it's funny because today, as we're recording this, the IOC has lifted the ban on Russians and Belarusians. So this is a very timely conversation that still we're having this controversy with Russia.
Yeah. I don't like hearing that the Russians are going to be accepted back into the fold.
You talked about cool stadiums. Which ones stand out to you?
Well, the main stadium, the Lenin Central Stadium, I think it was called, that one was pretty amazing. And they had a really good thing up in Estonia for the sailing, where they did the sailing. That was pretty nice. They had a highway that went from Minsk, Belarus to Moscow, and that's where they held the road race of the cycling on that. And the marathon went all around the river, and that was a pretty interesting route they went, because the whole route just was like by the side of the river the whole way until it made it to the stadium.
And Moscow is a huge city.
Yeah.
That's the amazing thing. It's just such a big city. What do you think readers should take away from these games as a whole?
Well, I tried to be nice to the athletes who participated, because it really wasn't their fault that they were in these doping systems, especially the East German women swimmers. They really were kind of victims and not really the ones to blame. But I look at it and say, these are good performances by the people who competed in them, so they ought to be praised. But at the same time, you've got to look at everything with a grain of salt, because the Soviets did so many things to cheat, basically.
Anything else in terms of legacy from these games? Like, do you think the IOC learned anything from having games in Moscow?
Yeah, I think they definitely did. Yeah, there's probably a reason why it took them until 2014 to go back to Russia, and hopefully not anytime soon, but who knows?
Well, because this was also the first games in a communist country.
Right.
And then right after that, we have 1984 Sarajevo, which is another communist country at the time.
But very different games.
Yes.
Yeah.
Much kind of beloved Sarajevo
Yeah.
is,
Yeah.
especially, and especially since then it ended up being war torn, and there's just a lot of that
Mhm.
whole outpouring of support
Mhm.
for that city after those games.
Yeah.
I'm not sure we would do the same for Russia.
Yeah.
Most importantly, what do you think of Misha?
Oh, that's such a great bear. I actually have one of them. I bought one off eBay, part of my sports collection. That was probably one of the best legacies from this games, was that they had a mascot, and after that they'd have mascots every Olympics. So I guess if you want to look at a positive legacy, you can see it there.
You also write football books and working on some of those, but what other Olympic things would you like to explore in written form?
I kind of just want to do the same thing, but do it for a different games. I'm not sure which ones I pick. I thought of doing something for the 25th anniversary of Salt Lake, but the problem is that it takes so long for the process of, after you write it, how long it takes for them to set up the book
Oh,
itself.
the publishing
Type,
process.
yeah, the publishing process, yeah. So it takes so long for that, that there would be no way it would have gotten out by 2027, so I was like, I can't really do that. But yeah, there have definitely been some of the older Olympics I've looked at, and I have a whole lot of material on LA 84 now. But I'm not sure that would be a very interesting book. So I don't know.
The boycott from the other side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that we missed talking about, not Moscow 1980, that you want to make sure that we discuss?
Well, one of the funniest stories of the Olympics in Moscow was the food fight, where a whole bunch of British and Australian people got into this huge food fight at the Olympic Village because they were mad because the discotheque had closed early. They wanted the, you know, disco, I guess, and they got mad, so they just started throwing food all over the place. And then the Russian police had to get involved, and then that was the end of that. But yeah, that was one of the really weird stories. And then there was the story where it came up as a headline. It was like Jimmy Carter ejected from Olympics, and it was like, what's going on here? And it was because there was a British swimmer named Jimmy Carter who got into similar trouble, and they ejected him, made him go home. So Jimmy Carter did go to the Olympics, after Moscow Olympics, after all.
Not a great name to have at the time, I would
Yeah.
think.
It's when you start going by Jamie or something else entirely.
Yeah.
That's
It's so
fantastic.
amazing what stories survive to make it through history.
Yeah.
It's the discotheque. I think they stopped having discotheques after this, because that was it. That was because it's 76. I remember when Jill visited Montreal, the 76 discotheque was a big happening place too. So they were expecting the same in 1980, but somehow,
Yeah.
Soviet discotheque, that's where you get into trouble.
Yeah.
Oh, well, Tommy, thank you so much for coming on. And actually, thank you very much for demystifying Moscow 1980 for us.
Yes.
That's, huge help there. This book was really interesting, and a ton of research went in and work went into it. And we appreciate knowing some of the big stories that happened and things that helped kind of change the games in little ways throughout history.
Hmm. Yeah. Thank you for having me on. I love listening to your podcast, especially during the Olympics. Although I have to change my sleep schedule whenever I want to listen to you guys, because I'm like, okay, I need to get to bed, but I want to listen to your daily review first. So,
Well, thank you.
yeah.
Thank you very much. Well, Tommy, thank you so much. We'll put a link to the book in the show notes. 1980
Okay,
Moscow
thank you.
Olympics, a day-by-day history.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tommy. We'll have a link to the 1980 Moscow Olympics, a day-by-day history in the show notes. You can also find it in our bookshop.org storefront at bookshop.org/shop/flamealivepod. Purchases made through that link go to keeping the show's flame alive. So I know we talked a little bit about it during the interview, but like now that you know more about Moscow, what do you think of these games now?
I think I'm even more confused in a way than I was before because it was still an Olympics. You know, it still had all the competition, even with all the doping and all the nefarious judging that was going on. And it still had all the bells and whistles and pomp and circumstance. And yet we will never get all of it because we couldn't watch it. And even the videos that you see now, most of it is in Russian. So you can't really know what's going on. So it's hard, but I do know so much more now. And it's like, okay, a little bit of that black hole is not, it's a lot grayer as opposed to black.
Yes. I'd be curious to talk with Russians who were alive then and watched it and loved it, and what those games mean for their personal history, kind of thing. Like we can look back at LA 1984 and we can look back at Atlanta 1996, and there's always some national pride there. So
Right.
even if there were issues with some of the games. So I wonder what they think. If you're
They
from
all
Russia,
loved Misha.
They did all love Misha, as did
and
you.
As did I, as do I.
He is one of the iconic mascots.
Big guns of mascots.
Speaking of historical games, we are also having a summer of nostalgia here at Keep the Flame Alive on our Patreon site, patreon.com/flamealivepod. We are sharing never before seen photos and videos from our escapades at Beijing 2022, Paris 2024, and Milano Cortina 2026. You know, I'm really sorry I don't think I took pictures of the parking lot where we were stuck at various points in time during Beijing.
I was going to say which parking lot. There were a few that we got ourselves stuck in.
But there are many other happier memories that may jog your memory, things that happened near the field of play because we're
not on the field of play.
Right. And just some really fun moments that make being at the games special. So if you'd like to relive that with us, go to patreon.com/flamealivepod and keep our flame alive by reaching out and either becoming a patron or purchasing the Summer of Nostalgia collection. That is going to do it for this episode. We don't have news today because we're taping a little early. I am at the LA 2028 World Press Briefing this week. So I will have hopefully some stories to tell next week.
I'm excited to hear it.
Thank you so much for listening.
And until next time, keep the flame alive.